Today is February the 9th of 2022, and we're here with Steven Denny. Steven's running for the 320th District Court, which is wholly within Potter County.
Completely in Potter County.
Welcome, Steven.
Thanks for having me again, Dan. It's great to be here.
Tell the voters why you're running for the 320th District Court.
Well, with anything that I endeavor to do, it's because I consulted with my wife, talked to my friends, talked to my family. We prayed about it, and I feel like I would do a good job for the taxpayers in that court. I've spent my entire career on the sorts of cases that are heard in that court. I've done all manner of criminal cases, both as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney. I've done family law. I've done civil cases. I've just handled all the things that court hears. And I think that it's important that a trial lawyer be a judge in a trial court, because you're someone who has experience working in that field, and it just makes the most sense.
So what kind of cases does the 320th District Court hear?
Roughly a third of the cases are family law, things like divorces or child modifications or things like that. Roughly a third of it is going to be criminal law, things, felonies is what's heard in that court. Anything from state jail felonies all the way up to capital felonies can be heard in a district court. And then the rest of it is rounded out by tax cases and maybe cases where someone wasn't paying their property taxes and the government wants to foreclose on their home and things like that. Just a lot of different civil things, car wrecks or contract disputes are often heard in the district court as well.
So you mentioned child modification cases. I did not know that there were such of a case, thing as a child modification case. So tell us how that would end up in court.
Well, and by that, I don't mean gender modification or anything like that. I mean, like if a couple of parents have gone through a divorce and they have arranged custody through a different court at a different time, but one of the parents says that the situation has changed, and they come back to court saying either the other parent owes more child support or the other parent is unfit to have visitation like they had before.
Okay.
Yeah, not the nefarious thing that probably pops into mind with that. But if there were two parents that disagreed about whether a child should go through a gender modification and there was a lawsuit filed, that would be the sort of thing that court would hear.
So how would that occur? Would one parent sue the other?
That would be what would have to happen, because if you just had one parent, currently in Texas, there's no real way to protect that child from their own parent. That's how we ended up with the divorce laws. That's how nobody can really contest it, because the person that ought to be looking out for the child is the one that wants to end the child's life. And so whenever you have a parent that wants to modify a child's gender through surgery or chemical means, unless there's another parent there willing to fight about it, there wouldn't be anybody to stop them.
Man, times have changed.
They have.
So let's tell the voters a little bit about your experience and background so they understand why you think you have the qualifications.
Sure.
For judge.
Yeah, I grew up here in Amarillo. I grew up on the east side over at 2805 South Bivens. I went to Lawndale and then Oakdale and Bowie, Caprock. I ended up graduating from Tascosa High School, went to WT and got my Bachelor of Science in Communication there. Since WT didn't have a law school, I ended up going to Texas Tech in Lubbock. Me and my wife, now 25, we're working on the 26th year of marriage. We met while she was working at Sears and I was working at Circuit City here in Amarillo. We've been married through law school and ever since. I practiced in Lubbock for a little while as a criminal defense lawyer, and then we had our son, Grant, who's a type 1 diabetic. All of our family still lived in the Amarillo area, though, and we thought it would be best to have him closer to family, and saw the value in having grandparents close and having them help raise with him. So we moved back home, and I was able to get a job with the 47th DA's office.
Excuse me.
working for Randall Sims. I was a felony prosecutor. I worked in the grand jury area. I presented cases every week to the grand jury for indictment. After that, I worked in a trial court where Judge Abe Lopez was the judge at the time, and I tried numerous cases. I didn't even keep track of them. Everything from state jail felony possession of controlled substance cases all the way to capital murders where the death penalty had been waived. Just all sorts of different experiences and different cases. And in doing that, probably only 1% of the cases actually go to trial. And so you have to kind of know what a jury is willing to do in your particular area and then try and work the case out for somewhere near that, but not too low, because then you've undersold the case and not served the public like you're supposed to do. So after doing that for several years, I got the opportunity to go be a justice advisor in Afghanistan as a contractor for the Department of State. I did that for 8 months, where I set up local prosecutor and defense offices. I advised judges and police officers. We trained those same officers and then mentored them in how to run their courts and how to use their legal system there in Afghanistan. After doing that, I came home, was able to open my defense practice again, and then I've been representing people accused of breaking the law since I got back in 2011. I've been doing that ever since. I think the reason that kind of the long way of getting to it, the reason that makes me qualified is I know as the judge what the community standard is for different things. I know what to expect whenever I file a divorce case, because I've had to talk to the parties in that case and tell them, if we go to a court, this is what a court is likely to do. And so we need to either expect that from the judge, or we need to work this out on our own and be happy with what we work out. The same thing is true with the criminal case. If I'm talking to a victim of a crime or the victim of a deadly crime, I'm talking to their family, I have to know what to tell them that a jury would likely do. If I'm representing that person accused of committing that crime, I have to tell that person what a jury would likely do, what a judge would likely do, what the outcome is likely to be, so that whenever they make an offer on their case, I can adequately advise them about what's happening. If I just came off the street and asked you what is a possession with controlled substance case worth, average citizen probably doesn't have any idea what the punishment range is, much less what a jury would do in Potter County. And so I bring that to you. I'm ready to go to work. I know what a case is worth. I know what a jury is likely to do with a case. I know how to try a case. It would seriously be day one. I know how to conduct a trial on a criminal matter. On day one, I know how to conduct a trial on a family law matter. And that's immediately 60% of the work done by that court. I wouldn't need to wait. I wouldn't need to learn. I wouldn't have to find out how to do it. I wouldn't have to look in a book. I know what to say and what to do to move those cases down the road.
So does the court currently have a backlog of cases that you'd have to resolve, or are they pretty caught up? Do you know?
They're not caught up. There's over 400 pending felony cases in that court right now. Now they get a large percentage of the newly indicted cases, so it's constantly filling back up. It's not like you can get the backlog down and then coast on your laurels because you did such a good job. There's constantly new cases coming in, and so you have to be willing to work. Every month you have to, lack of a better word, you have to threaten that you're going to have a jury trial, and you need to have a jury trial because there's plenty of people sitting in jail waiting to have their day in court. They don't like the offer. The offer's too high, the offer's too low. I don't know, but they need their day in court, and the only way to do that is to have a trial, and you have to be willing to do that, and the successful courts that move their dockets do that every single month.
So how long, if somebody gets charged with a crime, or let's say somebody files a civil case that ends up in your court, they file it tomorrow, how long would they expect to have to wait before they had justice?
Well, right now you would wait quite a while. Sometimes people waiting in jail on felonies for serious cases like murder or sexual assault are in there for years. Civil cases, the same thing. Sometimes a civil case is a little different because the parties drag it out intentionally. They hope that it'll just go away. With civil litigation, there's depositions and discovery that just drags on sometimes for a long time. With the criminal case, you can have depositions, but that's not a usual thing. Most of the time, it's just the backlog. It's what's in the way. A court conducts a docket call where they call all of the cases that have had a previous announcement that we want a trial, we can't work this out. And what a court ought to do is just start at the oldest ones and the most serious ones and have those people show up for trial. And if you're going to get rid of it, let's have a trial and get rid of it. And let's move on to the next one the next month, the next oldest. And you just systematically do that until the old cases are gone. And so it would be crazy for me to promise voters I'm going to have you in court within a certain amount of time, because I don't know what that time would be. I know that I've got to clear 400 cases that are already just sitting there, and that's in addition to several thousand cases that are sitting there on people that we don't know where they're at. They're absconders. They jumped bond or bail. They're in other jurisdictions. They're in prison somewhere else, and we just haven't brought them back. So there's the 400 cases is just the tip of the iceberg. There's thousands that are waiting, ready for whenever we go looking for those people.
Well, it seems to me that that's an awful long time for people to wait to resolve a dispute.
It's a very long time to resolve a dispute, especially if you're the person who's sitting in jail. From two perspectives. One is if you're sitting in jail as the defendant and have proclaimed your innocence, sitting in jail for 3 years is a life-altering occurrence. I mean, if you think about that, there's people sitting in Potter County Jail that don't know what it's like to have COVID on the outside. They've never attempted to go into a store and be told to put a mask on because they've been in jail the whole time. At the same time, taxpayers are paying $50 or $60 a day to house these people. The jail is the highest budget item in the county's budget next to the road and bridge. And so it's a tremendous expense, and every inmate we have out there is another liability because if something happens, that's the highest probability of the county getting a lawsuit. And so moving the people who are occupying space in jail is definitely a priority for me.
Well, how do you resolve that problem? Do we need to add another court?
Well, that's kind of the difficult part. The voters have elected judges based on their qualifications and experience to do this work. And my opinion is you're paying them a decent salary to do the work, and they ought to be up there doing it. Whenever you start talking about adding other judges or other courts, you've got to pay those judges. And so in the example of this, I know that certain courts have added visiting judges and paid them over $1,000 a day to come do the job of judges that we're already paying for.
So you just need to get with the program and get it rolling and get it done.
I think we've got enough judges and enough courts to move cases as it is. And until I'm standing there going, okay, I can't fit anything else in my schedule based on the resources I have, I'm not willing to ask the taxpayers to come in and foot the bill for somebody to do my job. I think it's important for me to do my job. And at the point that I can no longer fit anything else in the day, maybe we'll revisit that. But for example, the 320th, Judge Sermon didn't try a single case herself until September of 2019. That was pre-COVID. Every month before that, there was a visiting judge every month came in to do the trials. And I don't think that's how you move cases. She told the voters back then, her quote was, I have the robe and the gavel, we're ready to get to work. But she didn't get to work. She didn't try a case herself until September. And she only tried 2 cases in 2019. She's only tried 8 cases total since 2019. And I think I can do better. I think we can try a case almost every month. Now, there's times that you show up and the defendant absconds. I've sat there many times when I'm there ready to go and my client didn't show up. There's times that you show up and the prosecution's witnesses can't be there, or maybe they caught COVID and they can't be there. So there's always extenuating circumstances. But my intention is to do the work that the voters are hiring me to do and fill my time up doing their work and not asking someone else to do it in addition to me for an additional cost.
Could you run an evening court or something, add hours to help get caught up?
You know, that's something that I wouldn't be opposed to, but the problem with that is getting other departments talked into it. You know, you start talking about moving inmates at night or having security at the courthouse at night. You're involved with the sheriff now, and now you've affected their budget. You have to have a prosecutor there if you're going to do that, and so now you've got to have a prosecutor there and their investigator and their support staff. And so I anticipate that if I proposed anything like that, we would meet with severe resistance right away. But I'm certainly not opposed to that, because and the other problem would be getting jurors that are willing to come down at night. If you're going to have evening court that involved jurors, it's hard enough to get them to commit to hear the case during the day when they get to take off of work by law. I think it would be pretty difficult to get the jurors down there at night. But having hearings is certainly something that happens in other counties and other courts, and that's something that I would certainly be agreeable to. If somebody needed a setting and we couldn't work it in during the week, that would certainly be something, as long as we didn't rely on all the other departments that would immediately throw a fit about it.
I would think with technology today and everybody using Zoom and those type things, it would really should make everything move a lot quicker, because you wouldn't have to transport the prisoners. You could do it from right where they are.
Sometimes
save
you
a lot of money.
Yeah, sometimes you can. If it's an agreed matter, you can definitely do it any time of day or night. You just log into the Zoom, and you don't need a bailiff because there's no security problem. You just need the prosecutor and the defense attorney and the jail to be there, and they're there all the time anyway. So doing something by video wouldn't be a problem either. Same thing with civil cases. If you could get the participants to do that, the only person you'd really have to worry about is the court or the court reporter, and that shouldn't be a problem either. I'm certainly a fan of doing things remotely if we can. I, in fact, testified in front of the State Bar Committee a few months ago in favor of keeping Zoom hearings available for non-contested matters for exactly that reason. The example I used that day was I was set in about 4 different counties for docket call that morning. I was able to attend every single one of them within the period of about 30, 45 minutes and didn't have to miss one. In the days pre-COVID, I would have gotten to choose one of those to go to, and everybody else I would have just filed a continuance. And then that means that we've delayed justice in all those courts. And if a person is in jail, they're sitting in jail and costing another month's worth of food and housing.
Yeah. Any way we can make things more efficient, I think would be good. So what do you think is the most important quality that a judge should have?
I think they need to listen. I think a judge needs to listen to what the litigants have to say. And obviously there's rules of evidence and some things that you're not allowed to listen to because the rules say this isn't proper to come into court. But one of the things that I've learned from doing this for 20 plus years as a trial attorney is people know that they're in a bad spot when they've come to court, whether it's a family law case or whether it's a criminal case. They know that they're in a bad spot and bad things are possibly going to happen. But they take that medicine, if you want to call it that, they take their medicine a lot better if they feel like they've been given a fair shake, if they feel like they've been heard, if they feel like they've gotten to tell their story to their satisfaction. And so I think a good judge listens and hears both sides and makes their decision based on all the evidence that's proper and available to them.
So what would you like to tell the voters as to why they should choose you over your opponent?
Because I'll do the work starting day one. I'm not just empty platitudes. I actually will start trying cases the first day I'm eligible as a judge to do that. My intention would be to call the clerk's office and call the DA's office and have things set up ready to go so that we could get started right away. I think it's important that we get these cases heard in a timely manner, and the only way you do that is to show up and do that work. I would use visiting judges very sparingly. I'm not going to say that we wouldn't, because there's times that you have to, and that's why that process is there. But I certainly wouldn't be using them instead of me. We would be using them in addition to me to move cases whenever absolutely necessary.
I think one of the things I've heard from attorneys, their complaints that I hear, is that they go into the courthouse on a Friday afternoon and they can't find a judge.
Yeah, that's absolutely a concern. You could go into court today, this morning, and not find one. There was a couple there, but in fact, the other day, I've been going every morning and handing out, not every morning, but every morning there's a jury panel. I've been going and handing out flyers to people going in for jury service, and there's been several days that me and the jurors have beaten the judges there by quite a long time, the judge that the jurors were being called for. I guess the best way to say that is, it's easy to say, yeah, I'll go to work, and yeah, I'll do this, and yeah, I work hard. But if you go down there and look at the parking spot of the 320th now, we're not there 8 to 5. They're not there all the time like was promised. And I guess the best way to tell you is, I could promise you that all day long. But if you look at my life, I commit to things and I do them. I'm on the fire department, and so whenever there's a call in the middle of the night, I've committed to go help somebody in their time of need, and I hear the pager, I get up and I go do it. And so if you look at my personal life, that reflects what I'm willing to do. I've got a successful law practice. Whenever people need me there, I'm there. If you don't show up at your private law practice and don't return the phone calls, nobody hires you to do the work. And so I think it's better to look at what's actually happening and how I treat people, how I do things, how I live my life, rather than me just saying, yeah, I'll come to work. That's easy to do. That's what the last judge in there said. She said, we'll come to work, we'll do it. And then we didn't have a trial with her for 9 months.
Well, it comes down to being responsible.
I think so.
If the voters are going to entrust you with this position and pay you, they're going to expect you to do the job and to be there.
Well, and
it's kind of your duty. And
if nobody calls them out on it, nobody knows this is happening.
And there's nobody up above them that can.
No, the voter is who gets
them
to say, hey, we don't approve of this. What were you doing for 8 months? And if people like me didn't run against the incumbent judges, nobody would know. Nobody would care, except for the 3 people that month that were trying to get on the trial docket and get their case heard so they could get out of jail. One of the quotes that's often attributed wrongly to Benjamin Franklin, I think, is, there will be no justice until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are. It's actually Salon who said that, but that's appropriate for the legal system from both sides. If you're a victim, you feel like you're going through something that nobody else understands and nobody cares because this isn't happening to them. And gosh, this person is getting away with murder, is your opinion there. And then from the other side, the person who's wrongfully accused sitting in jail, you have no idea what I'm going through. I've sat here in jail and I was innocent and my case was, not guilty from a jury or dismissed or whatever the case may be. And you don't get it because you weren't there. So it's appropriate for all sides of the legal system. As far as work ethic, one of the things that I tell people is that integrity is what you do when you think no one is watching. And I've had integrity my whole life. I've had many jobs where I didn't have anybody watching what I was doing and I was responsible for things. There's nobody sitting in my bedroom to see if I get up and go to the fire call at 3 a.m. If I don't go, somebody assumes that I had something else that I couldn't do it for. There's nobody grading my paper on that. And so I think it's important to have integrity whenever you have a job of public trust like that, that the public can say, we know this guy and he's going to do his job. Nobody needs to grade his paper because he's doing the right thing.
So do you think, I'm just curious, is that why judges get opponents, you think, is because of frustration?
Well, sometimes judges get opponents out of spite. They're sour grapes over something that happened in the court, something like that. Sometimes judges get opponents because they see them as a position of vulnerability. Maybe they were appointed by the governor and not chosen by the voters, and they think that's a ripe position to just see, do the voters agree with the governor's appointment or not. But in this case, it was several things. The first thing was I didn't know that she was going to run. That was step one. I had been told that she wasn't going to run from people that I trusted, and then I observed, not doing the work, not trying the cases. I didn't think she was actually enjoying doing the work, and thought that rumor might have been true. And then I waited 2 weeks into the filing period. I didn't file right away, and so I waited to see, and she hadn't filed right away like many of the other judges had done that were excited about their work and wanted to keep their job. And so I filed, and then she didn't immediately come out and outrage against someone running against her. She waited until 5 days prior to the filing deadline expiring. And so in my line of work, we call that a clue, that maybe she doesn't want to do the work. I am excited about it. I want to do it. I'm young enough and old enough at the same time to be wise enough to do the job, but young enough that I'm still excited about doing it. I'm not a 20-year county court at law judge that's burned out and tired of all the nonsense that defense and prosecuting attorneys bring to you every day and fighting about whether we can get a pass or not. I'm not tired of that. I'm still willing to go in and fight with them and fight for the system, that we have a working system with people willing to work in the system.
Well, I've seen some of these candidates with flyers and messages that they have out saying that to support them because they're on the side of, for instance, law enforcement. To me, shouldn't a judge be impartial?
Absolutely. There's a whole slew of questions that if you ask me, you're not going to get an answer to them. I'm going to tell you. I'm sorry, Dan. The best one was, and in fact, you might have been the one that emailed it in to the NAACP Voters Forum. Somebody asked.
That was me.
Was it? I thought it might be you.
And I didn't know it was going to the judges. I meant that for some other people,
okay.
But I guess y'all were on.
Yeah.
So they gave you the question, but I didn't mean for it to go to the judge.
I know. I heard that question. I thought, well, look at that. Dan Rogers is watching the NAACP forum. And they asked, what is your position on paper ballots? And of course I have a position on paper ballots. I have a lot of thoughts about a lot of things, but I'm not allowed to publicly expose those. And if I did, it would remove me from any sort of case that involved that. One side or the other would be upset that I had publicly either supported or defended or opposed or whatever that particular issue. And so whenever it comes to specific issues, I can't. So I'm definitely careful to say that, I'm a defense attorney. Right now, everything I do is trying to undo everything law enforcement does. But I also have friends that are law enforcement. I represent police officers accused of crime. So it's not that I'm pro law enforcement or pro defendant or anything like that. I'm pro the system. Whenever somebody breaks into my car, I call the police and I expect them to show up and do their job. So whenever you show up into the court, I expect everyone to have done their job up until the point that we're there. I expect the police to have investigated the case and followed the rules, and I intend to follow those same rules. I intend to apply them as written. I don't intend to fabricate them into whatever I think they ought to be. We have a lot of judicial activism. If a judge doesn't agree with the sentencing guidelines, for instance, there's a case where if someone's charged with a relatively low-level crime, of a felony still, though, so pretty serious, but they have 2 priors from 15, 20 years ago, and they're sequential priors. Now that person's punishment range, although it could have been 2 to 10 for a third-degree felony, now that person's minimum is 25 years. And so a judge might disagree with that and try and find a way to get around that, where if I'm the judge, I look at the law, I know that there's 3 branches of government, and I'm the judicial, and that's not the legislative, So if the legislator said this is what happens to a person in this scenario, it's not up to me to say I don't think this is right and go outside that. It's up to me to issue a sentence within that range. And we don't have that. There's been some situations arise where that didn't happen. And I feel very strongly against that if there is a law, it's the judge's job to follow the law. In fact, I'm a founding member of the Federalist Society here in Amarillo, the Amarillo chapter, and that's basically the entire philosophy of that is that the law is as written, and it's not up to a judge to rewrite it. Now, if it's unconstitutional, if it conflicts with another law, or if it conflicts with the Constitution, then it's the judge's responsibility to identify that. And my experience in doing appellate work is going to be phenomenal experience for that sort of thing. And so we identify that, we issue findings of fact, conclusions of law, and then an appellate court can decide whether or not that law is constitutional or not. But it's not up to a judge to say, I don't like this law and I think it should happen a different way. That's how we ended up with Obamacare being ratified. That's how we ended up with same-sex marriage being ratified in all 50 states when each state was dealing with it in their own time. That's how we ended up with that, because of a Supreme Court going out of their way to rule on things that weren't necessarily in their purview. And if you read the opinions carefully, you can't justify them legally. They are not based on law and statute. They're based on their feelings. And that's not the way to run a legal system. And nobody should want it to be, because even though the feelings might be in your favor today, they might flip around next time, and all of a sudden your feelings are not going to help you, and you'll be the one being prosecuted the next time.
That's right. That's why you have to stick to the letter of the law.
Every single time.
And if you don't like it, then you change the law.
Yeah, you petition the lawmakers, not
right.
the judges. The judges are the wrong way to address that. You go to Fort Price or Ronnie Jackson or ask them, tell them what your beef is, not the judge.
Right. Well, very good. Well, Steven, I appreciate you coming by today, and good luck out there with your campaigning. And do you have a website that people can get a hold of you at?
I do. I've vote for dennyforjudge.com. I've also got a Facebook page, and if you interact with me on the Facebook page, you're getting me. I'm the one that answers the questions. It's not a paid representative. It's actually me.
Well, very good. Well, good luck out there, and we will see you on March 1.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
All right. Thanks.